Well, hello.
Hey,
Hey,
you're on stage.
I am on stage at Citi Field wearing my Grateful Mets t-shirt. Probably a bootleg, probably a double copyright infringement, but we saw Bobby on stage wearing a lot shirt the other day, so all hell is broken loose as far as enforcement is concerned. Anyway, so happy to be here in my home borough, my beloved city, seeing this beloved band.
Well, man, a little bit jealous that I can't be there with you, but I'm also pretty dang comfortable here at home. My cat is bothering me right now. It's either way works, you know. Everybody that's there is having a great time, and everybody I know that's watching it at home is having a great time too. We should let me run down the set list, but we should sort of go quickly to our interview since it's the whole thing is basically about Nugsnet, so we don't
Right.
really need to do a spiel about Nugsnet. The band began with "Feel Like a Stranger." They did "Franklin's Tower," "Mama Tribe," "Alabama Getaway," "Dear Mr. Fantasy" with the "Hey Jude" tag, and "Truckin' into Deal." I didn't miss
Yep,
anything, did I?
you did not miss a damn
I
thing.
didn't think so.
And let me just say, we should mention that if you're watching this on the free preview of Set Two, you should go to nugs.net and check it out. Check out the free trial. Check out all the fantastic things to offer on Nugs. You'll hear more about that in just a moment because we have the man who dreamed this thing up. Before we go, I also want to plug one little thing. Mickey Hart has another one of his vibrational expressionism art exhibits going in the New York area. Tomorrow at the Wentworth Gallery in Short Hills, New Jersey. You can go to mickeyhart.net for details. Mickey's art shows have been a great success, and Mickey's going to be there in person tomorrow. So you can go and thank
Wonderful.
him in person for the way he's been blowing your mind up here on stage.
It's been a great tour, man. Every level. The band is just blowing me away every single time.
Yep.
I'm. It's exhausting, but it's great fun. And
Right.
we should let's go to our pre-recorded interview. We spoke with the gentleman who hired us for this gig and thought it up. The guy who thought up Nugsnet, and he'll tell you the story of how it went from being his personal music distribution system into being a phenomenally popular and deep library of live music for your
Right.
listening pleasure in a variety of formats. So let's have a nice visit with Brad Serling, and we will not come back afterwards because it'll just go right back to the show as soon as we're done here. So Gary and I will see you on Saturday. He'll be at Fenway, so enjoy, everybody. Here's Brad.
Well, everyone, we've got to be on our best behavior tonight because our boss is here.
Yeah.
Uh, the man who's primarily responsible for what we're doing and what you're seeing, and these incredible live streams of this music in such incredible visual and sonic splendor. The founder of Nugs.net, Brad Serling. Hey, man.
Hey, nice to see you guys.
Dude, I can't praise your work enough. The feed has been just so amazing as because I'm working for you. I've seen every show on this tour and the audio and video have been spectacular. It seems like whoever's calling the camera work this time is very musical. It's just great.
Yes, that's Ted. He has been doing a great job. So I can't take credit for any of that, although I appreciate you saying so. There's an entire team that shoots on stage in the venue, works the robos, does the handhelds. Ted in the director's seat calling the shots. Ross Harris doing the broadcast mix, which is mixed from the stems that Derek is sending from front of house. So there's so many elements in the chain. Really, I mean, we're doing the broadcast. Yeah. So if the broadcast looks good, we are responsible for how good the broadcast itself looks or doesn't look. But all of the content going into it is being done by an entire team of people
Well,
that is on tour with the band doing
I,
it.
I understand, and I wasn't really giving you credit for everything all
Right.
the way down to the camera work. I was just thanking you so much for creating the medium through which we get to do this wonderful thing.
Right. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. I did want to point out to the fans at home, that there's a lot of people that make this happen. And it's not, it's not Nugsnet's video crew. It's not Nugsnet's
Ah,
audio crew. That's the point I think fans need to know. that there's plenty of people who deserve credit along the way.
Yeah, and I've got to say, I have been privileged to get to some shows live, and I've watched a couple of them from side of stage. So I've seen the camera crew at work. I've seen them scrambling to get the right shot for the right song, and I've seen, the people who are calling the shots and all that stuff. And it's fantastic. It's really, I mean, it's as complicated as like a Super Bowl broadcast. I mean, not quite as many cameras in play. Not, we don't have the Goodyear blimp or anything like that, but we do. But we do have people who are really attuned to this music and really understand the rhythm of a show and really understand incorporating the audience into it, but not too much. There's great interplay between band and audience in these shots. It's really, there's a real artistry to this, and your team is nailing it.
Well, thank you. And in the stadium shows, it's a lot more challenging because there's the screen that's behind the band, and then there's the side screens, which are portrait. So, the camera guys have to center things that are going to appear, and they don't necessarily know what's going to appear on which screen because it's the lighting team that's deciding what goes on the screen behind the band, not the video team.
Wow.
So they just need to be prepared in case the LD says, okay, put that up on the, and they're not necessarily on comms talking to the camera. The video crew is all on comms, but not necessarily talking to the lighting team at the same time.
So everybody is improvising. This is amazing.
Yeah, that's my point. It's like a mad jazz dance every night.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, the quality has just been spectacular. I've got good speakers in my living room and a fairly big TV screen, and I've had friends over to watch with me so many of these shows. And the dancing in my living room is plenty of evidence. The music has been awesome, which of course isn't your responsibility, but the whole package has been just wonderful. And we're having a great time doing these interviews. So I'm just gushing at you, man.
Well, thank you. I'm glad I'm really proud of this show that we've created together, the Dead Air, because for years I always said, what can we do to fill the dead air at Set Break? And then the light bulb went off. Let's do a show called Dead Air. And, it's when I called you guys and said, hey, let's do this. Got the band's approval. And they're like, yeah, sure. Sounds great. Yeah.
It's just been wonderful. We've had so many terrific conversations, and we keep getting better at it as we go. So it's a real pleasure to be doing this. And it's great to have you on so we can thank you directly.
Yeah, well, my pleasure. And thank you for the hard work. And I'm sad that we only have 10 shows left or however many, that this tour is winding down. So
yeah. Hey, we're available for Goose intermissions.
Right. Well, it's funny. They, Billy Strings wants to do something like this. I'm sure Goose would love to do something like that. It's just the logistics of, it, as doing it on this tour. It's it's hard to nail everyone down.
Well, at least I wouldn't have to go back 50 years to get caught up on Goose history or Billy Strings history, so it might be a manageable task.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of songs every night, so it's a lot.
The scramble to get guests has always been a challenge, and we're trying to fit our schedules in with the schedules of our potential guests, and sometimes we get the person the day of the show that they appear on that evening. Sometimes we have a little bit of a buffer. I think, David, you and I are going to be working really hard in those 3 days the band has off between Indianapolis and Boulder. That could be our real mother load of interviews, I think.
Yeah.
Well, we used to do it completely live, so I think
that's right. Yeah.
This is much easier logistically to just get the interviews pre-recorded and get them in. I think it's much easier for your crew at the show as well. But let's talk about Nugs here. We've got the founder of Nugs, which is just an amazing resource, and we've been plugging it on these things in between. You started a streaming service in the last couple of years and have this immense library. So let's talk about that and what you're doing on the big picture.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. Particularly on Dead and Company tour, I realize how amazing this full circle has, come together, because the reason why we're here doing this is because, in the 80s and 90s, I was doing this as a fan, taping the shows, and I'd come home from tour and so many people wanted copies of my tapes. I thought there must be a better way to do this. Called up the Grateful Dead and said, can I put my tapes on a website? I think I told this story on this Dead Air before, but it's important to know that this came out of the fact that I was doing this anyway, and I wanted to share tapes with people, and the Grateful Dead said it was okay, just don't rip us off. And what I did, which was called nugs.net in the mid 90s as a free site, got so popular that the Grateful Dead called me and said, we either need to shut you down or go into business.
Wow.
So it's important, to connect the dots for everybody at home. The reason why we're doing this is because I was doing it anyway with their permission as a fan, just like any other fan, but I happened to do something that became really popular and the band hired me. And that was Grateful Dead back in 2000. There was no touring band, but there was still the business of Grateful Dead Productions.
Right.
That's what led to my intro to Fish, where Fish went into business with me and we launched livefish.com in 2002, while Nugsnet still remained a fan site. Then we signed all these other bands on nugs.net and launched the streaming services, both Livefish and the Nugsnet subscription service, launched the pay-per-view business, which brings us up to today. So that whole catalog that built up was, started with the business connection with Fish, putting out every night, and then their archival stuff. Ironically, Grateful Dead didn't come on in full Monty until a year ago because of licensing issues. We had Grateful Dead downloads, but we didn't have a Grateful Dead streaming license. Now we have that. So now for all the fans watching Dead and Company every night, you can get this current tour, you can buy a pay-per-view, but you can also stream the entire commercially released Grateful Dead catalog, which is all the albums, everything from the vault that's been commercially released for streaming. The one distinction there are the things that the band has not put out on the streaming services, like these magnificent box sets, like the one coming out now with the, RFK 73, all that stuff. That's not available streaming anywhere yet.
But all the Dave's Picks and Dick's Picks are streaming?
Everything that's been streaming on any streaming service is now part of the Nugsnet streaming service as well. So that's the distinction that, or I think the bonus that Deadheads should know with Nugsnet. You're getting Dead and Company. You can also get all the stuff that's on Spotify. And I realize most people probably already have a Spotify subscription or Apple Music or whatever their preference is. To us, that's like basic cable. And we're the premium package that gets you every night.
Well, this is the live music system here. The others are organized around albums and studio recordings. This has been from the beginning. And I want to make one more point before we move on, which is that what you just described is another manifestation of the tremendous creativity of the Deadheads, inspired by the Grateful Dead. So you did all of this in service of your own fandom and turned it into a cultural institution that benefits all of us. And we can thank the Grateful Dead for firing you up that way, and you for being smart enough to make it happen.
Thank you. Appreciate that. But that's absolutely true. If I was at home in my home studio, you would see all my tapes on the wall behind me, my cassettes that are still there that my daughter asks, Daddy, why do you have so many tapes that all say Grateful Dead? It's like, well, you know what I do for a living? That's how it started. So I explained to her, like, this cassette this is what I did as I went and I taped it. Now it all happens digitally and it all happens live and all this other stuff. But that is why. So, speaking of that Grateful Dead collection that's commercially released, you made a good point. On Nugsnet, you can actually go to Spring 77 and go show by show and listen to the shows as they were performed for whatever's been released. That is a very important distinction, because I would challenge you on Spotify or any other service to actually find a Grateful Dead show by the date. It's very difficult because they're all by whatever album title or release date that recording of the show was released. It really doesn't make sense. There's fans who've made playlists, which are super helpful. I mean, that's happened in the Fish world as well. All the live Fish stuff that's out on Spotify, there's fans who have gone and made the playlists and shared them. But on Nugsnet, or on Live Fish for that matter, the shows are just in the order that they were performed. And I spent a lot of time when we first officially onboarded the Grateful Dead catalog, reorganizing them. And, I had to make some judgment calls for things like, Ladies and Gentlemen, the Grateful Dead, that amazing collection from April 71 at the Fillmore. I wanted it to appear as April 71, even though it's not from one specific show. So there's some judgment calls we made, but the point was just to make it that you could go from 1970 to 71 to 72 to 73. They made it pretty easy for us in 72 with the entire Europe 72 tour out. But all of that is available. And for me, it is organized exactly like my tape collection was back in the day. So I could go to the wall of tapes and pull out, the Lyceum 72 show and then say, oh, what was the next show? And pull that out. Now you just do it swiping left to right on your phone. So to me, that was the thrill of and the technology's finally caught up with the passion that you can sit here with your phone and you can flip around and listen to every show and see how a song like Tennessee Jet evolved from 71 to 72 to,
Do you know how, well, it goes without saying that for guys like me, having such convenient access to so much of the musical history is just a wonderful tool for research, not to mention recreation.
yeah,
You know, you want to, and people take this music so seriously. So if you want to do that, like
yeah,
trace the evolution of Tennessee Jet or the five different rearrangements that Bobby did of Minglewood over the years. You can sort of
right.
take a linear sample through the archive. That's a wonderful feature.
And also hearing different instrumentations. What guitar was Jerry playing on? Which we haven't gone to that level yet. I hope to eventually add that where it has the actual instrument. So this is
Are
when
you serious?
we haven't done it yet, but that's something that
Damn.
very first time I met David Lemieux, that's a project we talked about. Hey, wouldn't it be cool if we were able to stream all these and have all this stuff? Hasn't happened yet, but that's something I would hope to do. I also want to do it in Fish World of, which guitar Trey was playing, which Languedoc, and what speaker.
That's great.
Even
Yeah.
getting into effects and,
Yeah, one of the things I miss primarily about old school music acquisition is liner notes and annotation, and and the fact that you can dive a little deeper. And I'm hoping maybe that's the next evolutionary step for streaming music, that you'll be able to click on a link and get the deeper story of things. But
like classical music of which,
yeah,
only who was the conductor and who was in the orchestra,
yeah,
but what size was the orchestra, which version of which movement or whatever, that's what we hope to do in Grateful Dead world. I mean, you could dive into just Dark Stars and do, like when you were going through every Dark Star to decide what the best one was. I don't remember, something you did about all the different Dark Stars. You could do that in the app and then know, well, what guitar was Jerry playing, or what, who was in the band at that point.
Are you thinking about allowing a feature so that the listeners can annotate as well? I mean, it'd be fun
I would
to have a
love
little
to.
comment section.
Yes, we've talked about this a lot with Fish of, breaking out the jams into the different segments and having the fan comments and create fan generated loops or playlists that are segments of bigger jams.
Nice.
Certainly that would be interesting in in Dark Star territory or Birdsong territory. Haven't done that yet, but it is, in our basket of ideas of things we want to do.
Right.
I think it makes a lot of sense.
If you need some writers or researchers,
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is there's super fans already doing this with bands like Goose, where they're tracking the evolution of Goose songs.
Wow.
They're a relatively young band, but there's a song that might have been a Vasudo song, which is the band that predated Goose, and when did Goose bring that back into the repertoire, and how has that song changed? Here's the fast version, here's the slow version. They're evolving that every night.
Oh,
and
that's great.
It's all available in the Nugsnet app, and so fans are going on their own and doing this. We'd actually like to enable them to annotate it like you're suggesting. They're doing it in the review section, but it's not quite tied to the point in time of the jam.
Yeah, but that's an important thing. This sort of collective curation is an important part of this whole thing. And as a songwriter myself for 50 years, I am so happy to hear people paying attention to songs as songs and thinking about them, because it's not just the jams, it's the songwriting too. And one of the reasons we like Goose is that they're decent songwriters,
Yeah.
So yeah, let's follow the song progress too.
Well, that was part of my pitch to Warner Brothers when we first did the licensing deal with them, maybe 10, 15 years ago, was the live performance is like a gateway to discovery of composition. So, particularly in the Grateful Dead or Fish world, if, you're there covering a Bob Dylan song, like particularly Grateful Dead covering Dylan songs, that opened up a lot of Dylan to me and got me into more Dylan. It got me into bluegrass through All of the Way. And, there's that natural thing of, well, who wrote these songs? And it's interesting to me to look through the Nugsnet catalog and click on a song title and see all the different bands that might have performed a particular song, whether it's a Neil Young song, a Dylan song, a Stone song, certainly going back to the blues catalogs.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah. So you can see because a lot of bands were inspired by the same songs. Think of when the Grateful Dead became the Grateful Dead, they were swimming in the same pool of all these other, jug bands and folkies in the Bay Area, or, post beatnik, listening to whatever. They were all listening to the same stuff, because back then it was literally sharing record collections.
Yeah.
So it's whoever had the best record collection, they'd go over to his house and listen and then borrow a record, and it's that was a great story. Bobby told me the first time we ever sat down in a business meeting, which was, this point almost 25 years ago, but he told me the story of how he would, he'd walk to his friend's house with a little portable record player under his arm and the latest Dylan album, and they'd all go over and put it on and listen. And then they'd borrow the older, 78 folky records from each other. And that's how they would learn songs. That's how they learned things like I Know You Rider and, things that are now classic Grateful Dead repertoire. They learned because they were all sharing each other's record collections. And, that's how Dylan discovered why Dylan came to New York, was to make the pilgrimage to get to the Mecca of, I forget the guy's name, it was some crazy folky who had this incredible collection in the village, and Dylan would go and study his record collection, and that's how he learned all these.
Yeah. And Dylan was known to steal his records too, as came out of a couple of biographies.
Thank God for that.
But I'm loving this conversation so much, because how wonderful would it be for at least a portion of the online music world to be decided by the passions of fans rather than an algorithm,
Right. That's a very important point. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hate to say this, but we're running out of time. We need to wrap this up. It's been 19 minutes, and
There's a show happening again.
I'm
Coming
afraid
back?
So they tell me.
we have been, this has been wonderful. We've had so much fun doing all these interviews, and every one of them has had to end abruptly because of this hard time limit. And that's the only downside of this whole project, is that we can't talk longer.
Right.
But thank you, Brad, for everything you've done to create this, for hiring us to do this wonderful job, but for having created this gigantic library of live music for everybody to share. It's a wonderful service to the culture, and we thank you.
Right.
Well, it literally is what gets me out of bed every morning, is the fact that I share this music with everyone, and you guys have been doing a great job. Really appreciate the hard work of doing Dead Air every night.
All right. Well, we're going to let that band rudely interrupt us, and we thank you again, Brad. And I know I'll see you very soon.
Thank you, boss.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks, guys.